Antoine Rempp with Executor Experts, and I'm sitting here with Gavin Friedley from BDO in Edmonton. And he's been participating at a lot of my events, and one of the topics that he always brings up, and he says if you don't get anything else from tonight or this afternoon, would be the difference between a successor annuitant and a beneficiary when you have a TFSA. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Specifically with TFSAs, the difference between a beneficiary and a successor annuitant is significant. So in a TFSA, you put money into an account. It's an investment account. It's not necessarily just a savings account. Let's call it a tax-free savings account. Mm-hmm. You can invest in a wide range of investments. When you put money into that account, any growth on that money is tax-free. When you take the money out, there is no tax. That's right. Because it's registered as a TFSA. When you pass away, you either have named a beneficiary or a successor annuitant. In most cases, the only person that can be a successor annuitant is your spouse.
Yes.
So, if you've named somebody your beneficiary, they get the money out of the TFSA. If you name your spouse as your successor annuitant, they get the TFSA. Effectively, they've doubled up their contribution room because they've taken everything that was in your TFSA, added it to their TFSA. And it does not change their contribution opportunities at all. So they continue to enjoy the tax-free growth and the tax-free withdrawals of all of the money that was in the TFSA for both of you.
So what if there was some unused room from the person who passed and there's a successor annuitant? How does that work?
The unused room of the person who passed is gone. Okay. They won't be able to adopt that. However, it does not affect the unused room of the recipient. So if you name them as a successor annuitant, they get the TFSA. It doesn't change how much more they can put in. It doesn't reduce the contribution room that they had.
Okay. So, and quite often people at events hear this, and then some of the questions back is, I want to name my daughter a successor annuitant. It's only for a spouse, right?
It's only for spouse.
So if you don't have a spouse, then it doesn't affect you as much. No. But if you do have a spouse, especially back in the days when TFSAs were just launched, a lot of the banks who were selling those assets didn't really know the difference between successor annuitant.
I think the default when TFSAs were first brought out was just to name somebody as the beneficiary.
That's right.
And this is very common because it's also what they did on RRSPs and RIFs.
Yes.
So when you named your beneficiary on your RRSP, for example, it was just habit to name a beneficiary. And as we do on life insurance policies, as we do on most of our financial assets, is we name a beneficiary. That's right. The successor annuitant idea was actually taken from registered investment funds, so the RIF, retirement investment or retirement income funds. Mm-hmm. It's early in the morning.
Yeah.
The idea of a successor annuitant came from retirement income funds. So it was transferred over or taken over to TFSAs as well to give a married couple the same treatment before and after death, puts them sort of in the same spot. It's also very interesting to look at beneficiaries in RRSPs. Mm-hmm. Yes. This is the other part of beneficiary versus successor annuitant that we talk about all the time at your events. If you name somebody a beneficiary of your RRSP, yes, they get the RRSP directly. It does not become part of your estate. However, your estate is responsible for the tax.
That's right.
So naming a successor annuitant, naming a beneficiary, these are very important things to do, but please be aware of the tax ramifications. You can wind up sticking the other beneficiaries with the tax bill on the RRSP while the beneficiary benefits from the money.
So one example is when you have a blended family, that happens a lot. You would have kids on each side of that blended family, and the spouses might think, I want to make sure my kids are going to get what I brought to that estate, so I'm going to name them as beneficiaries on an RSP account instead of naming the spouse. There's a spouse rollover that would cancel the tax or avoid the tax for the spouse, but the kids, then you have a tax bill there.
Yeah, if we're talking about RSPs, absolutely. When you pass away, if you don't have a spouse to roll the RSPs to, or sometimes a minor dependent child, yes, the RSP is taxed entirely in the hands of the estate. So when you have a spouse, it's an excellent opportunity, whether it's a first spouse or a second spouse, you have the opportunity to roll those assets tax-free or tax-deferred. It's usually the best move to try and take advantage of that. Even if you're splitting your assets between a second marriage and your children, making sure that you think about the tax impacts, because right now the top tax rate in Alberta is 48%.
Yes.
If you have a chance to keep half of your money and give it to your spouse instead of half of it to
CRA.
the federal government, and
Yes.
half of it to your kids.
Yeah.
You may want to give that specific asset to your spouse.
Especially knowing that that tax bill is not going to be in the hands of the person who gets the money, but in the hands of the estate. And that a lot of people sometimes don't realize the kids get the money and then you're the executor, you're dealing with the estate. Where do you have the tax bill?
Would you like a real life story?
Yes.
Okay, great. Husband and wife in their second marriage went into their financial advisor and named each other beneficiaries of their RSPs.
That's right.
2 weeks later, the wife went in and changed her beneficiaries to the children from her first marriage. The professional at the time was caught in a bit of a tight spot, but he couldn't exactly go tell the husband that, hey, she's changed her beneficiary designation. That's just confidential.
Yeah.
So they went on their merry way. Wife passed away. Husband had about $500,000 in these RSPs. The kids were named the beneficiaries.
That's right.
One child was living in Dubai,
Yeah.
and the other child had been working for him up until about 2 weeks prior when he fired her.
Thanks.
So there was approximately $200,000 in tax to pay on those RRSPs. The $250,000 each went to the two kids.
Mm-hmm.
There was approximately $200,000 of assets remaining in her estate that covered her tax.
Yeah.
Second husband wound up with nothing.
That's right.
So he was in the unenviable position of going back to the kids and asking if they wouldn't mind chipping in their $100,000 each to pay their tax on the RSPs they received.
Yeah.
Being the one child in Dubai that he'd never really met and the girl he just fired.
Yeah, probably not going to happen.
It can create for an interesting situation.
That's right. So again, tax planning is so important, and do it ahead of time because you never know when the day comes. So that's why having an accountant in your corner long before the time comes is so valuable.
Again, I agree.
Yes. Thank you.